Greece is in turmoil today as labor unions and other protesters try to stop the government from voting later this week on budget cuts and austerity program that many say is essential to delaying default. As the country's workers begin a 48-hour labor strike, violence erupted in Athens. Rioters looted stores and hurled pieces of marble and gasoline bombs at riot police who responded with tear gas. We're joined now by the New York Times Washington Bureau Chief David Leonhardt. Thank you so much, David, for joining us. Let's take a step back from what's happening today. The big picture is that the Parliament is supposed to vote this week on an austerity plan that some say doesn't even go far enough, that will only delay the inevitable. And also this week, clear signals from Angela Merkel in Germany that she doesn't see a big global agreement that will forestall default. So where are we with Europe?
Well, I think the problem is that the global economy here needs austerity from Greece, but it can't be only austerity from Greece that's going to solve this. All the looks at this that I've seen suggest that Greece can't cut its way to having a sustainable debt at this point. They're just in too deep. And so the solution needs to involve some combination not only of austerity in Greece, which, quite frankly, Greece has not really yet come to grips with, and I think that's some of what we see going on here, but it also has to involve probably some combination of bailout, which no doubt they will come up with another word to use, and haircuts for the banks that own some of this debt. And the question is that those are all politically tough, and will it happen in time to prevent some real market problems from debt that Greece took out but can't repay?
And of course, we always have to worry about the ramifications here if some of those financial institutions have exposure and there's sort of a roiling effect.
And I think there would be ramifications here. I mean, obviously, finance is a global industry, and so if you have a situation in which this becomes really dire in Europe, it pretty clearly affects market confidence here and, in turn, affects our economy. We've already seen that happen over the last couple of years.
And with what's happening here on Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street is now digging in for the long haul. Yeah. This is the president with Jake Tapper on ABC trying to make a connection between the Occupy Wall Street protest and the Tea Party movement. Let's watch.
I understand the frustrations that are being expressed in those protests. In some ways, they're not that different from some of the protests that we saw coming from the Tea Party, both on the left and the right. I think people feel separated from their government. They feel that their institutions aren't looking out for them.
Do you see that connection?
Well, I do, as long as we don't go too far with it. I mean, I think in both cases you do see an anger about what's going on, and you do see an anger that people want to express through more than simply voting. But I think clearly, as those remarks got at a little bit, clearly we're talking about this anger coming from opposite sides of the political spectrum. Of course, there's some overlap here and there, but basically the polling that's been done has found that many of the Tea Party people are not new to politics. They are conservatives. And many of the people at the Occupy Wall Street are liberals, or maybe even they consider themselves to the left of liberals. And so while I think there is something of a similar fed-upness, to make up a word, it is coming broadly from very different parts of the American political spectrum.
And in fact, just to make that point, some of the pictures we were just showing showed in New York City some people with long hair who looked more typically out of the 60s, standing right next to the Orthodox Jews, the Jewish community with their hats and beards from Brooklyn or whatever neighborhoods. But it shows that this is a very diverse crowd of protesters.
Oh, look, we're a very diverse country, and so you're going to have people with who look all kinds of different ways in both the Tea Party and in Occupy Wall Street. I'm sure you even have a few people who somehow consider themselves liberal in the Tea Party and somehow consider themselves conservative at these rallies. And I think the key thing here is it's highly unlikely that we're going to see any sort of alliance between the Tea Party and Occupy Wall Street. I think the question for Occupy Wall Street, quite frankly, is can it have anywhere near the success that the Tea Party has had?
David Leonhardt, thank you very much. The New York Times Washington Bureau Chief. Thanks for being with us.